A very good evening to all my wonderful champions out there. So today, you know what? Today is extra special because we are going to see the teamwork of two guys out there. Who? Well, it's the sperm and the egg, my dear children. I am telling you, this particular thing that you are going to watch is going to be really fun and interesting. So before I go ahead with the teamwork data, I'll be talking about the most wanted topic of this particular chapter, and that is menstruation. So everyone understands that, ma'am, ovulation happens, but do not understand the actual funda behind it, that why does it happen, on what day does it happen, what happens after ovulation, and what are those hormones which goes up and down. So I am here to talk all about it, my dear children. So you have to listen to me very carefully. I am telling you, you can trust me blindly, you can follow me blindly, because there are so many students out there who trusted like that and have got marvelous ranks and marvelous marks out there. I'll be showing you with the proof. Okay, do not worry about that. So as of now, let's go ahead. I'm really excited to show you this particular slide always, because this slide includes all those children who are very close to my heart. How did they become close to my heart? They interacted with me, they spoke to me. How? Do they have my number? No. The only way to contact is what? Through your comments, yeah, through your doubts, yes, through your answers, yes. All these things, my dear children, are very important over here, so that we build a connection. And I have a few children out there who are very consistently putting their answers out there, who are consistently asking me doubts, and who came back from the past just to say that I helped them. I'm really thankful to all of you. I'll just read out a few names. Okay, so we have Prajwal, who is very consistent. He gave me the question number 3's answer, not just question number 3. So basically, in homework question, I have a fixed question every time towards the end of the session. Apart from that, I ask questions in between the session as well. Okay, so if at all I get those answers, I understand that this particular child is very attentively listening to my particular video. So over here, I have Prajwal, who gave me a good explanation, a great, wonderful explanation of the homework number 3 that I gave. Good work, Prajwal. And then I have Veeresh Bane. The same thing goes for him as well. He has been very consistent, and he also put down the answers for all the homework question out there. I'm really proud of you guys, my dear children. And Prajwal, as I said, he has given me the question that I asked in the mid of the session. Same goes with Veeresh. And my dear children, I see a new person out there. Her name is Lakshmi Nayak, and she has given me the homework 3 answer. Well, kudos to you, Lakshmi, as well. You are doing an amazing job out there. And going a bit to the past, that is Saraswati Yadav, whom I have taught previously, my dear children, have commented something, that is, myself Meghna, happy to see you, with lots of information for PUC Biology. So this child, who actually put the username as Saraswati Yadav, came in back and commented. And you know, if at all you are watching this video, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's very rare that someone remembers you after what you have achieved in life. Okay, so that's so great of you. Thank you for commenting. It means a lot to me. God bless you a lot, and God bless everyone who is watching this particular video. And I would encourage you to please talk to me in the comment section. You can give me good feedbacks, you can give me bad feedbacks, you can ask me doubts, you can give the answers, whatever you want to do, but only study related. Okay, so please do that and have a connection with me. It is going to be very helpful for you guys also later, and I'll be able to spot you easily, answer your doubts easily, and things like that. So make sure you have that. And going ahead with what are we gonna study today? So there's a small problem with this particular slide. I didn't change it, I forgot to change it. So my dear children, today we are in L3, not L2. Okay, so we have completed all 2 levels. We are in this particular level where we are going to talk about menstruation, where we are going to talk about fertilization, gestation, and parturition. Each of the topics starting from menstruation would be covered, so you do not have to be worried. We are going to complete the whole chapter today itself, and after that you will be getting KCET PYQs in the next session. So make sure before going ahead and attending the next session, you are thorough with the concept videos that I have already put up. Now if you watch this video, I can guarantee that I can give you 11 marks in your PU2 and 3 marks in your KCET examination. If you want the notes, what do you have to do? You have to What do you have to do? You have to be a part of a WhatsApp channel. You will get the links there. You can download the PDF. Okay. Now, as I told you, I have proof that there are results, my dear children. So, these are the results that we have for this particular year, and I am telling you, you can be one among them. So, I am waiting for that particular moment where you will be coming and saying that Prajwal or Viresh or Lakshmi would be coming and saying that, ma'am, you taught me and I got the rank. Thank you. Ma'am, thank you for helping. Okay, whatever you want to say, you say, but I am waiting for that particular day where you actually reach up to a very high position out there and you get whatever you wish for. Okay, so starting off with the homework question that I gave the previous day, the ploidy of spermatogonia, the primary spermatocyte, the secondary spermatocyte and the spermatid is, that means it is asking you whether it's diploid or haploid. So I told you, whenever the process of spermatogenesis occurs, initially you would be having spermatogonia, my dear children, this guy, which is a normal cell out there, a germ cell out there. Okay, it has 2n number of chromosome. It increases its number by mitosis, and then later one guy among them becomes what? The primary spermatocyte. This primary spermatocyte that you see wants to become the sperm, and for that it does not undergoes mitosis but undergoes meiosis. So from here, when it divides, meiosis occurs in two stages. This is meiosis 1 and then there is meiosis 2. So after meiosis 1 you get two cells. What do you call them? You call them secondary spermatocyte. Okay, and what is the ploidy of this particular cell? Ploidy means whether it is diploid or haploid. Well, it becomes half. The number of chromosomes would become half. So here it becomes n, here also it becomes n. Now for those of you who are not understanding what I am telling you, please watch the other video. If we put explanation over here, it might take so long. Okay. Now over here, my dear children, this cell again has to undergo meiosis 2, right? So again into two cells. What do you call them? You call them spermatids. How many number of chromosomes will be there? It will be exactly same like this particular cell. So it will be NN. So over here, spermatogonia is 2N, as you can see over here. Primary spermatocyte again 2N. Secondary spermatocyte has become half. So it will be N, and spermatid also will be N. So your answer becomes D. Okay? Cool. Going ahead with the first topic that we have for the day. So from this point onwards, I want you all to be very, very attentive, all ears, okay? So the menstrual cycle. So the reason behind the mood swings, okay, you might have seen your mother or basically your sisters out there, or if you have friends who are girls, my dear children, you would be seeing that they have very bad mood swings out there. So whom should we blame? We should be blaming what? Our endocrine system. Our endocrine system as in the system that will be what you call releasing a lot of hormones out there. And these hormones which are being released, my dear children, are very, very important. Okay, very, very important. Why do I say so? For that, you have to understand the menstrual cycle. So instead of going with this particular picture, I am going to explain you in this particular format first, and then we will see that picture. So my dear children, first thing, you might have seen that your friends might be getting periods out there. Okay, periods is where the inner line of the uterus, okay, the innermost line of the uterus, what is it? It is endometrium. So the endometrium basically sheds off. That is known as periods or menstruation, my dear children. And when does it occur? In this particular phase, that is menstrual phase. Well, it can go up to 5 days or more than 5 days as well. Why does it happen? Because, my dear children, what is happening? The endometrium breaks apart. Okay, or basically endometrium is shedding down. Okay, now that happens, but why does that particular thing happen at the first place? So I'll tell you a background story that is happening. So this is the uterus which is there. Okay, and here you have the fallopian duct, and here waits the little eggy, or basically the egg. It is waiting for whom? It is waiting for sperm. Okay, and what exactly happens is that the whole family is completely ready for seeing the guy out there, for making them get married. But a twist happens. So as of now, as a part of what you call decoration and all, the innermost lining of the uterus is made to be very, very thick. Okay, it is made to be very, very thick. Why exactly does it happen? It happens because suppose if the egg and the sperm fertilizes, what will happen? There will be zygote formation. This zygote will form embryo, and that embryo has to be taken care of. There has to be someone to nourish it, and which is why we have the endometrium. So my dear children, the twist in the story is that after saying that, the sperm says that I will come to meet you. But then the twist happens that this guy never shows up. And which is why the egg will cry. Okay, the egg basically cries off. It says that, oh my God, he cheated me. And it sheds tears in the form of the blood. So that's not the actual case. The actual case is that since, my dear children, fusion is not happening, fertilization is not happening, what happens is that this egg, along with the thickened endometrium layer, my dear children, would be shedding down. That is the backstory. Okay, I hope you got it. Since fertilization is not happening, what happens? Over here, the endometrium which was there, it will be shedding down. Now, there are 4 hormones which you have to remember. 2 of them, okay, just a second. 2 of them are pituitary hormones, as in they are released from the pituitary glands. I hope you remember it. Previous day I told you what are the hormones. So one is FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, and the other one is LH. Okay, so these are the ones that are released by the pituitary glands. Who tells the pituitary glands to release these hormones? It will be gonadotropin releasing hormones that says that. Who releases that? It is released by the hypothalamus, which is also in our brain. So hypothalamus is a part of our brain. Same thing with pituitary glands also as well. It is also a part of our brain. Now this guy releases this and tells this particular guy to release FSH and LH. Fine. Now there are other hormones which are known as ovarian hormones. Why ovarian hormones? Because those are being released by the ovaries, my dear children. And what are those? First one is estrogen, and the second one is progesterone. What is it? It is progesterone. Now, the thing is that both of these guys dislike each other. Who guys? Basically, estrogen and progesterone do not want to see the FSH and LH. So there is what enmity over here. They do not like to see each other. Okay, so why I am saying all this thing is that during the menstrual phase, what exactly happens is that the level of estrogen and progesterone is less. It is what? Less. So I am just going to write E and P less. Okay? E and P are less. What about the FSH and LH? Since these guys are less, obviously FSH and LH can slowly what? Increase a bit. So basically over here in the menstrual phase, what happens? The FSH and LH, my dear children, it will slowly start increasing. I'm not saying that it increased all over, okay, totally, but it will slowly start increasing. Towards this particular phase, okay, towards this, the next phase out there, they increase very rapidly. So FSH and LH, the amount of it increases over here in this particular phase, which is known as the follicular phase or proliferative phase. So why exactly does the FSH increase? Just because they are not there? No, they actually have one very important function out there over here. So I am just shifting this FSH and LH over here so that you don't have any confusion. FSH, LH, towards the starting point, they are in increased amount. Okay. Now over here, or shall I? Okay, just a second. For better understanding, I'll do one very important thing. Okay. So this guy, that is estrogen and progesterone, they are less over here. What about the other guys out there? FSH and LH, they are stable. Okay, they are stable. Slowly, FSH and LH, they are gonna increase. They are gonna increase during the starting point of time. Okay, now why does it happen? Because I hope you remember, within the ovary, what is there? Within the ovary, there are so many follicles. The primary follicles out there, you remember 60,000 to 80,000 primary follicles are there. Now these follicles, at least some of them, would be what? Would be maturing to what secondary follicle? then the tertiary follicle, and things like that. And who is that someone that would tell that, hey follicles, you have to mature? Who is that? It is the FSH, which is why over here the amount of FSH will be more, so that the follicles could be matured. Okay, what is the use of follicles being matured? Because inside that, what do you have got? You have got the secondary oocyte. And what's our sole aim? To basically release this secondary oocyte from the cells out there, from the granulosa cell. You want this guy to come out, because then only the sperm can come and meet. No, otherwise can it meet? No. So our ultimate aim is to what? Is to basically let that secondary oocyte outside. So over here, the follicles which are there, it will keep on maturing under the influence of what? FSH and LH. And when it happens, my dear children, it's not just 1 or 2 follicles that would be maturing. Okay, it will be so many of them. But do we want all of them to mature? We just want one secondary oocyte, right? So there would be one guy who would be taking up the lead and saying that, hey, others, please don't mature. I'll be the person who will become the mature Graafian follicle. I will be the person who would be becoming the mature Graafian follicle. So why does it happen? Because the FSH and LH level is increasing. Now you need to understand one very important thing. So follicles over here, they are developing. When it develops like this, no, this follicle itself would be releasing one very important hormone from the starting point onwards. And what is that? That would be your estrogen. Your estrogen. So estrogen would be starting to get released by what? The follicles out there. Okay, so they will release. But ma'am, you said that FSH and LH cannot go together. Yes, I said correct only. So basically what happens? Estrogen is being released over here, which is why FSH and LH, the level of it will be going down. And we do not need it much. Okay, we do not need it much, because anyway only one follicle is going to be matured. So we do not need much amount of FSH and LH, because this Graafian follicle which is maturing, my dear children, the only one that is maturing, has enough receptors. Okay, so basically they look like this. They have enough receptors to survive with at least a little amount of FSH, if at all it's there. So they are totally fine with release of estrogen. So the level of FSH and LH during this particular period, if I say, my dear children, what happens to them? Over here, if I say FSH and LH level decreases, okay, it will be like straight line. Okay, it was like this, but now it is on the straight line. And my dear children, okay, there's a twist that happens. Since the follicles are being maturing over here, and it is releasing estrogen more and more. What happens? It basically, out of happiness, the estrogen says that, hey, FSH and LH, you also can what? Increase in amount. So basically, there comes a time where the amount of estrogen is way too high, and it forgets that it hates FSH and LH, and at this point of time, the amount of FSH and LH increases. Especially if you talk about LH, it is the one, it will be increasing a lot. So FSH also increases, but LH increases very much in amount. Okay, here estrogen is also very much in amount. So which is why LH increases in a very high amount, and because of this, my dear children, what will happen? The Graafian follicle which is there, that is the one that suffers. It will be blasting and basically what? Releasing the secondary oocyte which is there. At what point? At this particular point. This is known as the ovulatory phase. What do you call it? Ovulatory phase. This happens on the 14th day. Suppose this is first day, this will be happening on the 14th day, where because of LH surge, my dear children, what will happen? The follicle which is there, it will blast open and release what? The secondary oocyte. Remember, it has not formed the ovum yet. Okay, we studied that it is still stuck. So, does not form the ovum, it is just secondary oocyte which is being released over here. Why does it happen? Because the amount of estrogen is also way too much. Okay, now the secondary oocyte is released, but then it was very unfortunate for this to happen with the Graafian follicle, right? So basically, with whatever leftover thing is there, it forms something which is known as the corpus luteum. What is it? Corpus luteum. This is what? The the remnant of the Graafian follicle, as in whatever is left behind in the Graafian follicle, that is known as the corpus luteum. So ma'am, one doubt, you were talking about progesterone here, but what happens with the progesterone? You never spoke about that then. So I am coming to that. But before I go ahead, I just want to explain you once more until here, otherwise you will forget, and I understand that. So my dear children, on the first day, okay, the lady got her periods. Why? Because fertilization did not happen, which is why the endometrium had shut it down. Why did it shut down? Possibly because the amount of estrogen and progesterone were very less. Okay, and this particular guy out there, estrogen and progesterone, they have a very important function, that is to maintain what? The endometrium. That is to maintain the endometrium, especially is the work of progesterone. Okay, so these guys were very down, which is why FSH and LH said this is the right time to increase our amount. So slowly they increase their amount. After the menstrual phase gets over, the amount becomes very much increased, my dear children. Over here also they are increasing. Over here in this particular phase, that is follicular phase, the amount gradually increases way too much. And they basically make the follicles mature. But there is one problem. The mature follicles, the follicles which are maturing, my dear children, they are going to release something that is known as estrogen. So the estrogen keeps on increasing over here. When it keeps on increasing, what is happening? The other guy cannot be there. So the other guy will be lessening down. And at one point when the amount of estrogen is way too much, what will happen? It becomes so happy and says that, hey, you guys can also increase in amount. So the FSH and LH also increases in amount, especially whom? Especially the LH, and this is known as the LH surge. But when they become too happy and they jump, my dear children, they jump on the Graafian follicle, which is why the Graafian follicle ruptures and releases what? The secondary oocyte. And this release of secondary oocyte is known as ovulation, and this happens during the ovulatory phase, that is on the 14th day of the whole menstrual cycle. If you talk about progesterone, the level of progesterone remains to be stable. It does not increase, does not decrease, it remains to be stable. Now, ma'am, I understood why it is known as follicular phase, because over here follicles are generating, that's okay. But why is it known as proliferative phase? Why? Because, my dear children, over here, you know, estrogen has been increasing, and estrogen also is responsible for what? Endometrium, even though a little bit, but yes, it is responsible for endometrium. So slowly the endometrium will shut it down. It's slowly forming out there, slow growth, but it is happening. So that is why it is known as proliferative phase, as in it is proliferating, as in it is being made out there. Cool. Now the egg is released. Okay, why? Because LH surge happened, right? And what happens to the remnant of the Graafian follicle? It is still there. What do you call it? Corpus luteum. What do you call it? Corpus luteum. And from this point onwards, we are entering what? The luteal phase, or you also call it as secretory phase. Why do you call it as the luteal phase? First thing, because luteinizing hormone has a very important role to play over here. Corpus luteum, again, has a very important role to play over here. What was the reason why corpus luteum was formed? It was because of the LH surge, right? Because of the FSH and majorly, I'll change the color just a second. Because of the FSH and majorly the LH out there, the corpus luteum was formed. And I'll tell you, whenever FSH and LH make something, okay, they forget that these guys, whatever they are making, are going to release some hormones out there. And over here, again, what is being released, my dear children? Again, a very important hormone. So estrogen has obviously been released, but apart from that, one very important hormone increases in the amount, and that is progesterone. So the amount of progesterone increases, and if the amount of progesterone increases, what will happen? Over here, the endometrium, which was like this, become very thickened, because it is the one that will be responsible for maintenance of the endometrium and thickening of the endometrium. For maintenance and for thickening of the endometrium. Done. Okay, so that is happening by what? By the corpus luteum. Now, my dear children, and I told you, whenever they are there, these guys cannot be there. So basically, this progesterone, you know what it does? Okay, it says that this guy is still here, FSH and LH is still here. I have to report it to the hypothalamus. So basically it tells the hypothalamus to stop the secretion of GnRH, and hence, my dear children, FSH and LH obviously will be going down. So for the first time after a long time, progesterone came in and it saw FSH and LH, got very angry, told the hypothalamus to stop its secretion by stopping the secretion of GnRH, and then, my dear children, all of it will be obviously lowering down. Okay, it does that. But then it is always said that you should not be angry. You should not be way too angry, and you should think what are going to be the consequences if you become too angry. So over here, my dear children, the problem with progesterone's anger is that basically when it says the LH and FSH to drop down a bit, can this corpus luteum survive without these guys out there? Because these guys are the one that makes the corpus luteum, right? So if it made the corpus luteum, so if at all these guys are not there, do you think this can be there? And if this is not there, do you think progesterone can be there? No, it cannot be there. Okay, so the whole process, it takes some time for the progesterone to tell the hypothalamus to stop the secretion. All of it takes some time, and during this particular point of time, the uterus which is there, it is there with the thickened, endometrium and everything. The egg has been released. It is also waiting for the sperm to come in. Okay, and it waits for how many days? For a few days out there, for almost basically the egg can be fertilized within 1 day itself. Okay, should be fertilized within 1 day itself, but still some more days it is just put down like that. And my dear children, what will happen? What will happen slowly? Slowly, this guy, since FSH and LH is being less in amount, the corpus luteum will not be releasing the progesterone and estrogen, and slowly, since this guy is not there, the endometrium will be again shedding down. The endometrium will be again shedding down, and that's when you get the next round of periods. I hope it's clear. So over here, corpus luteum is there. It releases these hormones. These hormones are very good. They make the uterus lining very thick and does things like that. It's totally fine. The egg actually waits, and the egg's viable period is only up to 1 day. Okay, egg can remain viable only up to 1 day, my dear children. Please remember that. So basically it remains viable. After that it won't be viable, but it is still there. Okay, it is still there. And once, my dear children, the fertilization is not happening, what will happen? Slowly, the progesterone, because of that effect that it has done to the LH and FSH, it will slowly lessen down, which is why the endometrium will also go off. Okay, why am I saying that if fertilization is not happening, then this happens? The thing is that if fertilization is happening, if the zygote is forming, if the embryo is forming, my dear children, the embryo or basically the cells around the embryo or the tissue around the embryo, if you call, that is placenta, my dear children, it would be releasing a very important hormone that will still maintain the endometrium, or it will still allow the progesterone to be there, or it is someone that will still help the corpus luteum to be there. So since over here FSH and LH are not there to maintain the corpus luteum, that is why the shedding is happening, right? That's the whole reason. But if there is someone else to replace that position, then it's totally fine, right? So if fertilization happens, there is a hormone that is known as human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG, that takes up this particular place, and that's HCG is released from the placenta. Okay, placenta is a tissue, we will study about that. So placenta is being formed, and that HCG which is released by the placenta maintains the corpus luteum, and hence progesterone will be still there, and hence it can maintain the endometrium as well. But in this case, since fertilization has not happened, obviously everything will be going the opposite way and it will be shedding down. Now if you look at this particular picture, I think it will be much more clearer to you. So first to 5 days menstruation was happening. Over here, if you see the amount of estrogen and progesterone, it is less. Why is it less, my dear children? Because these guys were not there, which is why the menses happened at the first place, is because the level was so less. That is why no one was able to maintain the endometrium, which is why it is shedding down. And taking utilization of this, what is happening? The amount of FSH and LH, if you see, it is gradually increasing, and it is gradually increasing, and the follicles are developing. But as you see the follicles are developing, my dear children, what is happening? The amount of estrogen is increasing, but on the other hand, the amount of FSH is reducing. Slowly at this particular point of time, when the estrogen spike is there, Okay. What happens? The LH and FSH also increases, especially the LH, and this is known as LH surge. At this point of time, ovulation happens, the egg is being released, and what is remaining? The corpus luteum, and this corpus luteum is maintained by what? The LH and FSH over here. The corpus luteum would be releasing what? Progesterone, which is why both of these hormones have a spike over here. This progesterone, my dear children, makes the endometrium even more thickened, as you can see over here. But then it says that, hey, LH and FS, you should be dropping down. And when they drop down, my dear children, what will happen? Automatically, these guys also would be dropping down, because there is no one to maintain the corpus luteum out there. Okay, this phase is known as the luteal phase, 14 days. Okay, there are 14 days period, and that is the luteal phase out there. It is also known as secretory phase. Why secretory phase? Because the progesterone which is there, it tells the endometrium that you have to secrete certain very important things if at all the zygote comes in, if at all the embryo comes in. So you have to release some glycogen which will be giving some energy to the cells out there and things like that, which is why it is known as secretory phase as well. Always remember, the whole cycle is of 28 to 29 days, 14 days here, 14 days here. Some people have different number in their cycles. That is also totally fine. Sometimes if you're not getting your periods in the middle of the time, my dear children, if you're not getting your periods at the correct time out there, you should be having a checkup being done. Works? So that is all about menstruation. Now the first time when you get menstruation, what do you call it? You call this as menarche. And the last time you get menstruation, what do you call it? You call it menopause. It happens around 50 years of age, but it can happen early as well. Menarche can also start off early as well. Okay, so if at all you are someone who didn't get it still, do not be worried, you will get it. Okay, now menstrual phase, 3 to 5 days, shedding of endometrium lining if no fertilization. Follicular phase or proliferative phase, the primary follicles mature into Graafian follicle, endometrium regenerates. Why? Because there is estrogen. Okay, and FSH and LH level rise, estrogen secretion increases, and then what happens, my dear children? FSH and LH level would be decreasing also after this. After estrogen increases, LH and FSH decreases. Now ovulatory phase, where there is an LH surge, ovulation happens. Why LH surge happen? Because estrogen is being increased. Because of that, LH surge will be happening. Then luteal phase, my dear children, which is also known as secretory phase, the Graafian follicle forms the corpus luteum, releases progesterone for endometrial maintenance. So if no fertilization, corpus luteum degenerates, new cycle starts. Then the pregnancy happens. If pregnancy happens, the menstrual cycle will be stopping. There is no shedding of endometrial lining, it is needed. So menstrual cycle will be stopping if there is pregnancy. I hope that's clear. Okay, so when all of this happens in the case of primates, you know, primates are the one that has bigger or higher brain volume. For example, apes, for example, you, for example, me, monkeys, all of it, okay, all of it for them, you call this as menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle. And in the case of non-primates whose brain volume is comparatively lesser, my dear children, for example, cow, dog, cat, all of them. In this case, you call the cycle as estrus cycle. Estrus cycle has two different spelling. This one also works. Okay, this is known as estrus cycle. And in estrus cycle, my dear children, ovulation might be happening only once in their whole year. Okay, in the whole year, ovulation might be happening once, and that is the period where the animals are most sexually active. Okay, so I am giving you one question today. That is, can you tell me at least two differences between menstrual cycle and estrus cycle? That is your homework 1. Difference between menstrual and estrus cycle out there. Done? Okay, so please do that and do let me know. I'll check it in the comment section. Now going ahead, the secondary oocyte is being released, my dear children. Along with it, the polar body is also there. The second polar body is also there, right? Now, it's time for fertilization. It's time for the teamwork, right? So, I hope the menstruation part is clear. If at all you think the menstruation part is pakka clear, what do you have to do? Menstruation all clear. You have to type it in the comment section, because this is somewhere where you get stuck and I don't want you to get stuck. So, please put it down in the comment section. That's how I'll get to know that you understood. Okay, now, so finally they meet and where does it exactly happen? So I told you the ovary is the one that makes the egg and obviously releases it also, and the egg is really shy to meet the sperm, so it stays at one particular place. Okay, and what do you call this particular place as? You call this as ampulla. Ampulla is the wider region of the oviduct. So egg is staying where? Egg is staying in the ampulla, my dear children. The sperm, my dear children, would be coming up here at this particular point and fusing with it. Okay, and fusing with it. But is this whole process very easy? No. Why? Because there are 200 to 300 billion sperms out there who is competing to basically just meet with this particular ampulla out there. So this particular lady out there is very, very pretty. Okay, pretty in all sense. If you talk mentally pretty, okay, physically pretty, all of it, it's pretty good. Okay, so she is out there and the guys out there want to marry her. Okay, so basically all of them would be coming in, but only the fittest one would be surviving. Okay, the fittest one out there would be surviving. So only those sperms which have good motility, have good shape and size, my dear children, would be able to swim through this and come over here. Because in the case of female body, my dear children, they will be releasing so many things out there such that the movement of this particular sperms would be stopped. Why? Because all of them who have entered are foreign particles out there, and also this is also a very good mechanism for choosing the best quality sperm out there. Okay, so the one that survives everything, or the ones that survives everything, would be reaching up over here towards the ampulla. So that is why it is said that 60% of them should be having normal shape and size, and out of that 40% of them should be having good motility. We studied it, right? So if at all you remember, please let me know that as well. Now over here, my dear children, so I have written something for myself, ignore, I'll talk about that. So over here, but how did they actually meet? That is the question. So the secondary oocyte is released. Well, the secondary oocyte is accompanied by the polar body as well. Okay, what? The polar body as well. It is not the first polar body. Or is it the first polar body? Yes, it is the first polar body. Sorry. It was not the second polar body. It was the first polar body. If at all I said second previously, please forgive me. It is the first polar body. Okay. So at this particular point of time, my dear children, what happens is that the secondary oocyte is covered by one very important layer which you call as zona pellucida. Remember, we studied it. This zona pellucida which is there is made by the egg itself. Sorry, the secondary oocyte itself. Okay, apart from that, the follicle cells, the granulosa cells which are there, they helped in making the another layer which is known as corona radiata. So there are different walls around the secondary oocyte and the first polar body out there. Okay, the first layer would be the plasma membrane, the membrane of the egg membrane will be there, then comes zona pellucida, then comes corona radiata. Now suppose the sperm is coming in, there are so many sperms that comes in, my dear children. With the help of the enzymes out there in the acrosome, my dear children. Remember the acrosome at the head region of the sperm? It has hydrolytic enzymes. These hydrolytic enzymes are being released up here, and with the help of that, it removes all the corona radiata and everything out there. And later, there are certain receptors on the zona pellucida. There are certain receptors on the zona pellucida, and here the sperm will also be releasing certain things which will be going and binding on these receptors of zona pellucida. It's like the lock, the secret key out there. So it gives the key, and slowly what happens? The sperm would be able to move in. Once a sperm move in and goes ahead and fuses with the plasma membrane out there, no more sperms would be allowed to get inside. So the one guy who knows the secret key enters, that's all. So it's not the secret key, it's basically it releases certain things out there. These things are going to combine or fuse with the receptors on the zona pellucida layer, which is why it is slowly disintegrate and let this particular sperm in. And now the sperm is going to ultimately fuse with what? The egg membrane out there. And when this happens, my dear children, when it comes closer to the egg membrane, what will happen? The egg gets to understand that the sperm is over here. So what does it do? It tightens the security. Okay, it tightens the security because there might be so many villain characters out there, villain sperms out there, do not want them to enter as well. So basically the egg, or basically this particular secondary oocyte and everything would be releasing certain things, which is why this whole zona pellucida layer will become so thick that no sperms would be able to enter. Okay, and at this particular point of time, the secondary oocyte is going to further divide. It is going to complete. Always remember, it is going to complete the second round of meiosis to form what? The second polar body, and finally the ovum as well. At this point of time, when the sperm comes in contact with the egg membrane, that's when the meiosis finally completes off, my dear children. The secondary oocyte will be forming the ovum and the polar body out there. I hope it's clear. Yes. So over here, there is some things written over here we have to study because this is from your NCERT. I'm sorry. So first thing is insemination. What do you mean by insemination? When the semen is released into the vagina during the process of the sexual act is known as insemination, the release of semen. Okay. Now, in semen, that means semen inside the female body. Now, sperm movement. Sperm swim through the cervix, then through the uterus, then to the ampulla of the fallopian tube. Ovum transport. Ovary releases the ovum which reaches the ampulla. Both of them are here itself now. Sperm binds to zona pellucida, blocking the entry of other sperms. Acrosomal enzymes help the sperm penetrate the ovum and get inside. Okay, that means it is not ovum exactly, it's basically the secondary oocyte's outer structure only. So coronary data first, then zona pellucida, then finally the egg membrane. Now the secondary oocyte completes meiosis, forming a haploid ovum and a second polar body. The ovum obviously will be having only half number of chromosome, n number of chromosome, right? Because the sperm will also be having n and n comes together gives 2n, that is diploid. Now the haploid nuclei of the sperm and the ovum fuse to form what? The diploid zygote out there finally. Okay, finally it forms the diploid zygote which has 2n number of chromosomes. Works? Okay, got it? So please remember, sperm which is there, it is having n. The egg which is there or the ovum which is there, it is also having n. Together, it forms something which is known as zygote, and zygote will be having 2n number of chromosome, that is diploid. Because this zygote is single cellular zygote. Always remember, it's unicellular. It is just one cell, not that it is made up of two cells coming together, so it is two-celled. No, it is unicellular only because both of their nucleus will also be fusing, giving rise to 2n. So it is unicellular structure, and this has to divide and give rise to the whole human body like this. Now here in your NCERT, one very important thing is given, and that is about sex determination, my dear children. How do you think the sex is being determined? Okay, is this a magic, or does it just happen like that, or can we change? How does it happen? Can we decide what is the sex of the child? No, my dear children. Why a big no? Because I told you n number of chromosome come from here. Okay, so over here in the case of male, suppose this is a pair of chromosome, my dear children. Okay, this is a pair of chromosome. So one out of this you get it from the male parent, other one you get it from the female parent. That's when it will become a pair. So n and n becomes 2n. That is what it means. So my dear children, over here I do not want you to get confused. What exactly happens is that in the case of males, you have two chromosomes. One is this and the other one is this. This is known as X chromosome. This is known as Y chromosome. Similarly, in the case of females, you have two chromosomes as a pair. This is X chromosome and the other one is also X chromosome. So, they do not have different chromosomes, just the X chromosomes out there. Here also either X or Y. Always remember the Y chromosome which is there, it is small. And because you have a Y chromosome, that's why you are known as a male. Okay, now these were the pair which was there. From this only one has to come down because n and half has to come down from each parent, right? So either this can come, suppose this came in. Suppose this X came in, and from here you just have one option, that is X from the mother. X and S come together, what does it become? The male or the female? It will be what? The female. Now on the other hand, suppose this guy came in, Okay, the Y guy came in, and here you don't have an option, you just have X. So X and Y comes in, what do you get? What is the sex of the child? It will be male. So you tell me one very important question. Who is responsible for the sex of the child? The female or the male? According to NCERT, okay, according to general theory as well, it is the males who are responsible. Why? Because they have two types of chromosome, X and Y. So basically it can be this chromosome coming in or this chromosome coming in. If this comes in, it will be a female. If this comes in, it will be a male. Well, is it someone's fault? The male's fault? No. There is no fault with anyone out there. Okay, everyone are just human beings out there, and no one is responsible for what chromosomes are gonna come together, my dear children. Which is why we should not be blaming any gender out there in general, but in your NCERT one thing is given, that is the females were actually blamed for giving birth to the female child out there or the female children out there. First of all, is it a fault? No, it is not a fault to give birth to a female child. Second thing, is it actually correct to blame the females genetically if we talk about it? No, because they just have X chromosome. Whatever you do, they will pair and give you female or male. That's all. So please understand, there is no need to blame any gender out there, and in the NCERT it is specifically written, please don't blame the females out there. It is the male's chromosome that decides the gender of the child. Okay, I'm not blaming any guys out there, so not be worried. Okay, I'm a neutral person out there. Done? Now the zygote is being formed. The zygote, which is formed where? In the ampullary region, because fertilization happened there, right? Now the zygote is so happy, finally. My family was waiting for this particular day, they did all the decoration out there. Now I'll be moving towards the uterus and finally meet the endometrium, which will be able to nourish me, right? But can it go just like that? No, my dear children, the zygote has to transform. The zygote has to divide and make multiple cells out there. And what do you call this process as? You call this as cleavage towards the uterus, or the process of division of the zygote cell is known as cleavage. Okay, now going ahead over here, the transformation of the zygote, that is very much important. So over here you had the zygote cell and the nucleus. This cell divides into two cells and 2 nucleuses. This cell divides into 4 cells and 4 nucleuses. So this process is known as cleavage of the zygote. Always remember the cells which are going to be formed over here. Okay, the cell size, this is a neat question. It is going to be less compared to the zygote. So zygote is this big cell, but now you have divided into 2 cells. But what about the cytoplasmic content? The content within it, it remains the same because it is equally distributed over here. So if you say cytoplasmic content, it is what? The same itself. Okay, please understand this particular session might be a bit longer than usual, but with this you will understand each and every part of this particular chapter because we are ending up the chapter. So please stay there itself, don't go anywhere. Okay. Now, over here, as I said, my dear children, cleavage is happening. Okay, 1 cell became 4 cell, and once, my dear children, zygote has divided, you will not call it a zygote anymore. You will call this as embryo. An embryo will have so many stages: 4 cell stage, 8 cell stage, 16 cell stage, and things like that. So in your NCERT, there are certain stages which are being mentioned, and you have to remember those. Okay, what are those stages? This is the zygote. After the zygote, you have the embryo, right? So the stages being mentioned is morula and then blastocyst. So morula is when, my dear children, the number of cells are almost around 8 to 16. And what do you call these cells as? You call these cells as blastomere. Okay, you call them as blastomere. So here you have 2 blastomere, here you have 4 blastomere. Morula is a structure that is being formed. It's a ball of cell and it is having 8 to 16 blastomere. And when all of this is happening, my dear children, what is happening? Slowly the embryo is moving towards what? The uterus out there. But when does it make the final move? Basically when the morula transforms into the next thing that is known as blastocyst. And ma'am, what's special about blastocyst? Why is it the one that is going towards the uterus? Why not the morula? Because it has certain layers around it. Okay, over here I am going to talk about that. So my dear children, if you look at the structure of blastocyst, there are outer layer of cells, you call it as trophoblast. Understand this, this is very much important for you to understand placenta as well later on. So outer layer of cells, you call it trophoblast. Okay, now inside this you have inner layer of cells clumped up together like this. Okay, what do you call it? You call this as inner cell mass. Okay, so if at all you are not understanding the writing, here you have trophoblast, which is the outer layer, then you have inner cell mass, which is what? This particular thing that you can see. Okay, so trophoblast is something that will go ahead and get help in what? Embedding inside the endometrium. That means it will help in joining with the endometrium out there, and in future this trophoblast is something that will form another tissue, that will help in form another tissue which is known as placenta, because endometrium cannot do the whole work alone. It has to build up a very important tissue which is known as placenta. So basically who will help in that? It's the trophoblast. So as of now it goes near the endometrium, it's totally fine. But the endometrium says that, hey, you have to help me, we together have to form the placenta. Okay, I'll be still there, but I have to form the placenta which will help you to grow, or which will help the inner cell mass to grow. Why the inner cell mass to grow? What happens to the trophoblast? Trophoblast, I told you, it helps in the formation of placenta. What happens to this particular guy? Inner cell mass will be the one that actually will be forming the future embryo out there. It will be the one that will actually transform into what? A fetus later on. Please understand that. So it forms the embryo later on, the actual embryo. Now my dear children, the next thing that happens is implantation. I told you blastocyst is being formed. Over here, one more thing, very important thing. You see the free space, this is a free space only, and what do you call it? Blastocele. Okay, blastocele. So blastocyst has trophoblast, inner cell mass, and blastocele, and this will be having almost around 100 plus cells out there, and slowly they will transform and get down towards the uterus and get embedded. So a question, homework question 2. In what stage does the embryo get implanted in the endometrium? In what stage does the embryo get implanted in the endometrium? What stage? Morula, blastocyst, what stage? You have to tell me that, or there is something else. Okay, so please tell me that. Now this process of getting implanted is known as implantation. Blastocyst embeds in the uterine endometrium, pregnancy begins. Well, the answer is here, so I'll just cancel the question. I'll give you another question for homework 2. Okay, so anyways, this happens. So I am assuming you understood until here. Now comes the placenta. How is the placenta formed? Okay, how is the embryo going to develop in future? All of your questions would be answered up over here. So my dear children, I told you, you had what? The trophoblast and the inner cell mass. So this is the inner cell mass, and this is what? The trophoblast, right? So the trophoblast has come over here and now is embedded in the endometrium layer of the uterus, right? Slowly what will happen is that this trophoblast is going to form some structure like this. So this is the whole trophoblast cell only, and it is forming some structure like this, okay, like fingers. And what about the embryo? Embryo is growing, ma'am. Embryo is going over here. It is growing into a fetus slowly, but it is growing. Okay, so it's not an embryo, it's a fetus. But yeah, I cannot make an exact picture. That is why I made it over here. And basically, there is a connection as well over here. What is the connection? So let's make it here. There is a connection of this layer and the inner cell mass. Okay, so the inner cell mass has become the embryo and then slowly becoming the fetus as well, and the outer one is forming something which is known as the chorionic villi. What do you call it? Chorionic villi. Now, from the mother's side, what is happening? From the mother's side, it is forming certain blood spaces over here. What spaces? Blood spaces. What is the use of these blood spaces? Ma'am, over here, these are richly supplied with mother's blood vessels. And mother's blood vessels, what does it have, my dear children? It is bringing in some very important thing out there. What is that important thing? It is oxygen. It is oxygen plus the nutrients that are being brought from the mother's blood cells out there. But ma'am, there is no connection with the mother's blood cells and babies, right? There is. What is the connection? This particular thing that you see. This is known as the umbilical cord. What do you call it? You call this as the umbilical cord, my dear children. And this umbilical cord will be having so many blood vessels out there. And these blood vessels, as you can see, it goes to the chorionic villi out there. Okay, so here also you would be having so many blood vessels. I am not very good in making the diagram properly, but yes. So even though after being a biology teacher, yes, but yeah. So over here I'll try to make it a bit better at least. Just give me a second. So where were we? So we were over here. Okay, so the umbilical cord is coming in. Okay. And the umbilical cord has what, my dear children? It has all the blood vessels from the baby. Okay, and here what do you have? You have the blood vessels from the mother. So the mother's blood vessels over here would be pouring in blood, my dear children. Would be pouring in blood. From this blood, whatever important things are needed by the child will be going here. And whatever waste things are not needed by the child, it will be given to the mother's cell. So over here it gives back what? CO2. It gives back waste, whatever can diffuse, it will be diffusing to the blood spaces, and from the blood spaces it will go back to the blood vessels of the mother again. So this particular structure which is formed of chorionic villi and the blood spaces. Chorionic villi is made by the embryo itself, from the trophoblast of the embryo. Okay, and blood spaces is from the mother's side. So we say together they form a tissue. Together the mother and the embryo forms a tissue which is known as placenta. And this placenta is very, very important for what? Exchange of what? Exchange of CO2, oxygen and the waste. So it supplies oxygen and nutrients as well. Two things it supplies. Takes away two things. That is what? CO2 and waste. Waste, whatever is removable. Okay. And also the connection which is there is known as umbilical cord, which transports substances between the fetus and the mother. Remember, the blood of the mother and the child does not mix until and unless there is a complication. Okay, so blood of the mother and the child will not be mixing at this particular point of time when the baby is within the womb. Okay, or when the baby is within the uterus. Because it's totally separated out there. I told you the blood spaces are filled with the mother's blood out there, which would be leaking down from the blood vessels, which would be coming in over here, and from here diffusion is happening. They do not have any direct touchings out there. So chorionic villi are finger-like projections on the trophoblast surrounded by the maternal blood. Chorionic villi plus the uterine tissue or the maternal side. Uterus is of the mother, right? So the blood spaces, uterine tissue, everything is of the mother. So chorionic villi plus the uterine tissue forms what? The placenta. It is the structural and functional link between the mother and the fetus. And please remember one very important thing, that is placenta acts like an endocrine gland. What do you mean by that? That it is the one that will be releasing certain hormones as well, which is very, very, very important. Okay, so over here certain hormones will also be released by the placenta, and remember placenta is only formed during pregnancy, which is why we say that these hormones that you see, most of it are found only during pregnancy. So HCG is one such thing, that is human chorionic gonadotrophin. I told you, if fertilization happens, there is one hormone that is released by placenta, and this placenta is something that will be, this hormone is something that will be maintaining the corpus luteum, and corpus luteum can still make more and more progesterone for maintenance of the endometrium. You remember? So this is that hormone, human chorionic gonadotrophin. It is the one that maintains corpus luteum, which in turn will be producing what? Progesterone. Apart from that, placenta itself also produces progesterone. It also produces estrogen. Both of these hormones are regular hormones being produced in a human body. Okay, but these two hormones are only produced during pregnancy. During pregnancy, that is HCG, human chorionic gonadotrophin, and human placental lactogen. Okay, this is for the mammary glands of the mother, for it to secrete the milk. So this hormone is very much important there. Okay, so HCG, human chorionic gonadotrophin, and also HPL. Okay, that is human placental lactogen. Apart from that, you have estrogen and progesterone. In total, how many hormones are released by placenta? 4. Out of that, 2 is only secreted during pregnancy. Works? Done? Chalo. Now, going ahead, I hope this is also clear to you, at least a little clear. Yes? Now going ahead, so what about the other hormones? Do they just sit and watch? Nope. There are some very responsible hormones out there. One such hormone is relaxin. So the name relaxin suggests that it might be sitting and relaxing, but it is not. It is the one that makes the uterus relax. Why does the uterus need to relax, my dear children? So what happens when the baby moves out? No, the uterus is under lots of stress. It will contract. Now, I got the question. Homework number 2. What is that layer of the uterus which will help in uterine contraction? Which is that layer of the uterus that will be helping in uterine contraction? Tell me that in the comment section below if you know. Okay, so that is homework number 2. So basically contraction has to happen. It will happen, and at this point of time, for the baby to move out properly, obviously the cervical region and the uterine ligaments, they have to relax a bit. If they relax, there will be space so that the baby can move out. So my dear children, relaxin is also being released, but when? During, mostly towards the end of the pregnancy, and it is released by whom? It is released by the poor ovary out there. So ovary became tired of releasing just estrogen and progesterone. So probably they have started releasing what? Relaxin as well. But please remember, relaxin is towards the end of pregnancy. So as of now, you have got 3 hormones. Okay, you have got 3 hormones which is released only during pregnancy. One is HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. Second is human placental lactogen. The third one is relaxin. So relaxin relaxes the pelvic ligaments and the cervix, prepares the body for delivery. Now, the other hormones which are also increased in many folds, please remember this particular term. Okay, what are the hormones which are increased in many folds during pregnancy? This is a direct question. So that means they are already being released, but it increases more during pregnancy. One is cortisol. The other one is prolactin, and the third one is thyroxine. Okay, cortisol, prolactin, and the thyroxine. Prolactin is very much important again for the mammary gland. Okay, cortisol is also there, thyroxine is also there. All of it, they will be helping in the fetal growth, maternal metabolism, and also pregnancy maintenance. 3 things for the growth. Okay, maternal metabolism and for pregnancy maintenance. These are very, very important. What are those? Cortisol, prolactin, and thyroxine. Ma'am, are they released usually? Yes, they are released usually, but the amount increases. So you have named at least a few hormones out there. These 2 during pregnancy, this also during pregnancy. All of the other ones, it's generally there, but the secretion increases, during the pregnancy. Okay. Now, I am getting lack of breath. Just a second. Okay. Now, going ahead, we have got the hormones. Placenta is also going to be formed. Now, we have to go ahead with the actual formation of the baby out there, the proper. So, in the diagram, I already made the baby, but that is not how it works. You still have time. Okay. So, over here, have you heard about germless? That's the first question that I have for you. So we spoke about morula, we spoke about blastocyst. There is another stage of it that is known as gastrula as well of the embryo, where you have 3 germ layers, my dear children. Okay, so these 3 germ layers, you know, this one is the innermost, you call it as endoderm. This one is the outermost, you call this as ectoderm. Then there is a middle layer as well, which you call as mesoderm. So all the cells of the embryo, my dear children, they are arranged like this. They are arranged in 3 different layers. Ectoderm, that is the outermost layer, endoderm, innermost layer, and in middle we have mesoderm. These layers are known as germ layers because they are responsible for giving rise to all the organs of our body. Starting with the outermost layer, that is the ectoderm. It will be forming the skin, the brain and the nerves. What? The outermost layer forms the skin, that is also outermost, then the brain, okay, and also the nerves out there. This information has not been given in your NCERT, but you can just understand, have an understanding of it. The endoderm which is there inside, okay, it will be forming the lining of the lungs, the gut, the liver, all the things. Okay, the lining, because it is inside, it can form the lining of all those things. Mesoderm which is there, my dear children, it appears between the ectoderm and the endoderm, and what does it do? It forms the muscles, it forms the bones, the heart, the blood and more of it. Muscles, bones, heart and all those things. So you get to understand that at least the whole human body is made by these 3 germ layers out there. Whatever is in there is made by these 3 germ layers out there. Please remember that. And also remember one thing, that the cells of the embryo, all the cells of any particular stage of the embryo, my dear children, if you say, not any particular stage of the embryo, but most of it, okay, they are basically having a potential to form a whole embryo out there. So that means if I take a cell and I ask to and I give it all the growth condition to divide, my dear children, it can form the whole embryo again. And what do you call this feature as? This is known as pluripotency. Remember, it can just form the embryo, it cannot form the placenta and all. It can at least just form the whole embryo. This feature is known as pluripotency. So the cells over here, what do we call them? You call the cells of the embryo as stem cells. What cells? Stem cells. They have that magic property of giving rise to what? A whole organism. Now, depending on so there are some magicians who can do all type of magics, some magician which cannot do, right? Similarly, in stem cells also there are different category. Some cells are pluripotent, that means they can give rise to the embryo, okay? Some cells are totipotent, that means they can give rise to the embryo plus the placental tissue as well if needed. And in India, there are stem cell banks where basically people take the cells and keep it safe so that in future, if at all some organs are damaged, you can regrow and remake the organs, because it is our own cell, our body would not be rejecting it as well. Okay, now you have another fun homework. This is not an actual homework. If you want to do, you can do. Can you tell a cell in our body which like in adult human body, my dear children, which have a good amount of potency out there, which can give rise to certain cells out there? Can you name those cells which act like stem cells? Think about it and let me know, okay? Go Google it. Now, going ahead, that is excited to know what did you do inside your mother's womb? So are you excited to know about that? Well, I am going to talk about the stages involved in the formation of human beings out there. Okay, and this occurs during a period which is known as gestation. So gestation is the period where the embryo is going to form the fetus, my dear children. In the case of human beings, what is it? The period is of around 9 months. And for each month, you have some specific character which you have to remember. Okay, so let's start with the first month. First of all, answer me a question. When someone dies, how do you confirm that they are dead? Do this. You check for the pulse rate. The pulse rate is basically talking about the heart, whether the heart is beating or not, right? So over here, the first thing that forms as well is what? Your heart. So in the first month, you would be seeing heart formation, and also heartbeat will be what? Detectable. Now in the second month what happens? God decides that okay, heart and all start to beat, now it has to move around. No, I won't let it move around now, but at least I can help in the formation of limbs. Limbs as in this hind limb, forelimb, okay, hands and limb. So limbs are being formed and also digits are being formed. These digits, as you see, they are also formed towards the end of the second month. So by the end of second month, what do you find? You find limbs and digits. It's not like second month started and the limb formation will be ending up. No. Towards the end of it, you will find that limbs and digits are developed. Now the end of first trimester, what do you mean by that? First trimester means the first 3 months. So in each month, how many weeks are there? In each month, there are 4 weeks. So if 3 months are there, 3 into 4 is what? 12 weeks. So 12 weeks or first trimester, it's all the same, please understand it. So major organs, limbs and the external genitalia is being formed. So major organs, has your heart and everything is already being formed in the first month, it is written, right? Then later on, slowly all the other organs also being formed, my dear children. Limbs will also be there. The external genital organ, in the case of males, it will be penis. In the case of females, it will be what? The mons pubis and all those things out there. It will be formed. Now on the 4th month, there is nothing given in your NCERT, so you don't have to worry. In the 5th month, the baby says that, hey, God, please, you cannot do this to me. I have to move around. You have given me limbs, you have given me digits. I want to groove, I want to dance. Please let me do that. Okay, and God says like, okay, fine, do. Okay, so the first fetal movements, okay, the first time the fetal movements would be noticed during the 5th month. And also remember, the baby again says that, okay, I am dancing, but without much hair, it is not looking that great. Can you give me some hair on my head as well? So basically, hair also appears on the head region. So F for the first fetal movements and F for the 5th month. You can remember like that. Okay, 5th month, the first fetal movements will be there and there will be hair on the head as well. Now, my dear children, by the end of second trimester, that means after the 6th month, so this 3 months, okay, after that again 3 months, that means if you calculate again, so 6 months, my dear children, 6 into 4, each month will be having 4 weeks, 24 weeks, or the second trimester, what all will be there? Your fine hair would be covering the whole body, eyelids would be separate and eyelashes also forms. There will be what? Fine hair on the body. The God said that you wanted hair, no? Have hair on your head, on your body as well, on your eyelids as well, everything. So basically fine hair will be there, the eyelids which are there, they will also separate, and my dear children, eyelashes also forms over here during the end of the second trimester. Now again, 6th month is done until 6th month, 7, 8 is not been mentioned. 9th month, it is said that full developed fetus would be is ready for what? The birth. And with that, we complete what? This whole gestation period. I'll repeat it again. Listen to me carefully in the form of a story. So the first month, my dear children, God gives it the heart. The second month, God gives it, for making the heart, what do you need? You need the limbs and also the digits, right? And then at the end of 3rd trimester, most of the organs, for doing all this thing, you need brain, you need a lot of things, right? So most of the organs, the limbs and the external genitalia is also being formed. That is an extra thing that you have to remember. By the end of the 1st trimester out there, or by the end of 3 months. Now, 4th month skipped, 5th month directly, baby says that I want to dance. So the first fetal movements will be there and there will be hair on the head as well because the baby asked for it. Now 6 months, God says that you wanted hair, take it. You would have hair on the body as well, okay? Your eyelids will be separated and your eyelashes also would be formed. 7th and 8th month again skipped, directly by the end of 9th month, fully developed baby would be there, that is a fetus would be there. So this is about the gestation of human beings. I hope it's clear. If it's clear, what do you have to type? You have to type gestation, all clear. None? Cool. Now, going ahead with the last topic of this particular chapter, which is parturition. So we did mensuration, and then we did fertilization, then we saw placenta being formed, implantation happening, all of these things, okay, gestation also. Now parturition, where finally baby would be what? Moving out of the female body. And how does it work? Do you know how does it work? Well, I know how does it work, but before saying that, I need a little amount of water out there. Children, I hope you are also drinking enough water. Please drink it. Take this gap to drink some water, okay? You can drink as much as you want. I just said some for myself, okay? Now, my dear children, so what exactly happens? How does parturition happen? How does the baby move out? So over here, we are going to see what's happening inside the womb. So this is the uterus. Okay, so uterus has multiple layers out there. The outermost layer is perimetrium. Is it visible? No visible, not visible, not visible. Okay, perimetrium. Fine. The endometrium along with the placenta and everything is there already. Okay. And then you have one very important layer, which is what? The myometrium. It is formed of what? Muscles. What muscles? Smooth muscles. Smooth muscles are the ones that are directly under our brain's control. We cannot control the movement of it. So here also you have those smooth muscles. And then what do you have? You have the endometrium here as well. And what do you have? You have the baby over here. Okay, the fully developed baby out there is over here. Now what exactly happens is that this baby, not Bobby, okay, this baby would be releasing some hormones, okay, some hormones when it is fully developed. Now these hormones would be taken up by the placenta and it forms estrogen out of it. What it does? Placenta, okay, seeing what the baby has been produced, baby is producing hormones, so the placenta also releases another hormone that is known as estrogen. Okay, now when it releases estrogen, my dear children, one very important change happens in the myometrium. That is, there are so many receptors over here that will become active. Receptors means these are things out there which will be sending signals. Okay, these are the things, if bounded by the correct thing, it will be sending the signals out there. So what are these receptors known as? These receptors are known as oxytocin, oxytocin receptors. Okay, so the receptors are ready, but still we do not understand what, why. I don't understand anything, ma'am. Just I understood that the baby is releasing some hormones and the placenta seeing that is releasing estrogen, and the estrogen is making certain receptors active, and these receptors are known as oxytocin receptors. Now I'll tell you what's the use of it. So now when the baby is fully formed, my dear children, it will be like, I want to move out. So it will try to move out. And when it does, there are so many stress receptors in the uterus. What receptors? Stress receptors, as in it indicates that stress is there, stress is there, stress is there. So these stress receptors becomes active and it sends signal. What signal? Nervous signal. Okay, nervous signal or neural signal to what? To the mother's pituitary gland. Pituitary gland, you know, it is responsible for a lot of hormones. FSH and LH are the famous ones, right? So it goes to the mother's pituitary gland and say that there's a stress situation. You have to release one very important hormone, and that will be what? That is what? Oxytocin receptors. See, not oxytocin receptors, it will be what? Oxytocin hormone out there. Well, what pituitary gland? So pituitary gland has two lobes, anterior lobe and posterior lobe. So it's the anterior lobe that does most of the work, like FSH release, LH release and all those things. But over here, mother's posterior pituitary gland becomes active. Always remember that. That is also a very important question. Posterior pituitary gland becomes active and it releases a hormone that is known as oxytocin. Ma'am, we studied that over here. There are oxytocin receptors. Yes, my dear children. Now what will happen? These oxytocin hormones that you see will be coming and binding over here on the receptors on the myometrium. And what will happen? The myometrium starts contracting, 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 contracting. The baby will be moving down, 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 down. The stress receptors become more active. Stress receptors are active, they make the mother's pituitary gland release more oxytocin. more oxytocin comes and binds over here. The cycle repeats. What do you call this process as? First of all, the whole reflex that is happening, you call this as fetal ejection reflex. That means fetus wants to move out. Ejection as in moving out, eject out, right? So fetal ejection reflex. And who is responsible for that? It's the fully developed baby, the fetus, and also the placenta, which is responsible for the fetal ejection reflex. Very important question. Fully developed fetus, because it is releasing certain hormones out there, okay? Certain hormones out there, and then the placenta is converting these hormones to something else out there, and then, my dear children, there are receptors being active. So obviously this is a work of both the fetus as well as the placenta, and you call this as fetal ejection reflex. Now, my dearest little children, understand one very important thing. Also, the fetus trying to moving out is also a part of it. Yeah, fetus moving out is also part of it. Activating the stress receptor is also a part of it. So the fetus and the placenta has a major role to play like this. And you tell me whether it is just endocrine function, whether it's just a matter of hormones, or do you think neurons are also playing a very important role over here? What do you think? Well, yes. Both of them are playing equally important role, right? The hormones are being released, that is there. Receptors are active, but over here, this stress receptor out there has to send signal, neuronal signal, to the mother's pituitary gland, right? So over here, the neural signal is also very, very important along with the endocrine gland. So this whole process is what? Neuroendocrine function. Always remember that. So parturition is nothing but childbirth. It is expulsion of the fetus due to strong uterine contraction. It is triggered by signals from the fetus and the placenta. Mild uterine contraction begins, and this is known as the fetal ejection reflex. I hope you know why it is known as fetal ejection reflex and why both of them are equally involved. One guy releases hormones and moves down, the other guy makes the receptors very, very active. Okay. Hormonal role is that oxytocin from the maternal pituitary causes stronger uterine contraction, and this is positive feedback loop. As in, more and more is being released, right? More and more is being released, which is why it is known as positive feedback loop out there. Now, after birth, the placenta is also expelled. This thing also comes down along with the baby. Okay, please understand that. Now, for induced pregnancy, what do? Suppose the baby is not coming out, it's been very difficult. So, doctors, they inject oxytocin from their end to induce what? Labor. Because anyway, my dear children, when the oxytocin are being induced, there will be certain receptors that will be active. Okay, certain receptors that will be active. Certain receptors are already there. And estrogen adds more receptors out there, right? So, since once oxytocin is there, it will make more oxytocin to be released from the body, which is why if doctor just has to give oxytocin once to induce what? The labor. Okay, I hope it's completely clear. With whatever is given in your NCERT, I am trying my level best to explain it to you, not in a very big manner, but at least in a way that you understand things. Now, my dear children, one very important thing that also should be included over here is lactation. Okay, so after baby is born, obviously the mother has to feed the baby, and for that, what is there? There is mammary gland, my dear children, and the first milk that the mammary gland releases, it has a name. What do you call it? It is known as colostrum. It is known as colostrum, which is yellowish in color. It is yellowish in color, and my dear children, it is very, very important for the baby to get that, because the baby is not in a state to produce antibodies by itself. It is not in a state to fight against diseases. So there are some antibodies which there are some factors which are known as antibodies that will help the baby fight against diseases, and these ready-made antibodies are given from the mother to the child with the help of the colostrum, which is why this is very, very important. So over here, for the mammary gland to be active, you need prolactin, you need so many other hormones. Prolactin is another hormone which is made by the posterior pituitary gland itself. Okay, so please remember that. And my dear children, during this entire process comes the role of relaxin, that is released by the ovary, so that the cervix is dilated properly and the baby can move out. So with this, we complete the chapter. And with this, I have few questions to ask you guys. Okay, let's begin. So first question, which set of hormones are secreted during pregnancy only? Estrogen, HPL, relaxin. Progesterone, cortisol, HCG, HCG, HPL, relaxin, cortisol, progestrogens and relaxin. So over here estrogen has already been released in our body, I hope you know that. Yeah, progesterone again, cortisol again, over here nothing. Okay, so this is the perfect option. These are the hormones being released only during pregnancy, HCG, HPL and relaxin. Both of them released by the placenta, one of them released by the ovary. Cortisol, it is usually released, progestrogens are artificial or what you call synthetic progesterone which are being injected, and relaxin, my dear children, it is only during pregnancy. So what is your answer for this question? Your answer would be C. Okay? Ayo, wait. So I marked it differently, but the answer is C, okay? I marked it by mistake. My dear children, the answer is C. Okay. Next. A temporary endocrine gland in the human body is temporary endocrine gland. It is not always there. Okay. So pineal gland, where is it? It's in our brain. Corpus caardiacum, corpus luteum, corpus allatum, my dear children, what is the answer? It is corpus luteum. It is a temporary thing which is there, right? It is not always there. And this is known as an endocrine gland. Why? Because it is responsible for the production of progesterone, which is a hormone, and also estrogen, which is another hormone, which is why it is known as the endocrine gland. So your answer becomes C. Okay. Next thing, the embryo remains connected to the placenta through what? Through what? Chorionic villi, trophoblast, umbilical cord, none of this. So the embryo remains connected to the placenta. Embryo is there, the trophoblast and the blood spaces from the placenta. In between that, what do you have? The umbilical cord, my dear children. Okay, so this and this is a part of placenta itself. None of this cannot be an option. Your answer is umbilical cord. Now, the last question, and then there is a homework question. Okay, so match column 1 with column 2 and select the correct option from the codes given below. Parturition, what do you mean by that? Parturition is what? Attachment of embryo to endometrium? No. Release of egg from Graafian follicle? No. Delivery of baby from the uterus? Yes. So A goes with 3. Do we have an option like that? Yes. With that we already got the answer. So we have to recheck all the other options correct. B goes with 4. Gestation goes with 4. So duration between pregnancy and birth is gestation? Yes. Correct? Oh yeah. Correct? Right. And this is for how many months in the case of human beings? 9 months. Ovulation. Ovulation, C is 2. C is 2. Release of egg from the Graafian follicle. Yes, that is known as ovulation. What hormone is responsible for it? LH. Implantation. D goes with 1. Attachment of embryo to endometrium is known as implantation. Yes. Okay, now conception, that is not studied, ma'am. Conception is nothing but fertilization itself. Okay, so E goes with 5. Formation of zygote by fusion of egg and the sperm is known as conception. So we say that they have conceived. Why they have conceived? Because conception has happened. Okay, so this becomes your answer. Now, the homework question, the third homework question to you guys. The fetal ejection reflex in humans triggers the release of what? Oxytocin from the fetal pituitary, human chorionic gonadotropin from the placenta, human placental lactogen from the placenta, oxytocin from the maternal pituitary. So you have to tell me the answer in the comment section. I'll be waiting for all of you to put down the answers. And if at all you think that this particular session was useful for you, what do you have to do? You have to click on the like button and you have to subscribe to our channel. Children, not going any further because I know you might be tired. So just wishing you all the best, and if at all you have any doubt, put it down in the comment section. Lots and lots of love. Bye-bye.